to start this by talking a little bit about what it means to be a prosecutor, a little bit about the Emmett County Prosecutor's Office, and a little bit about myself. So hopefully everyone can hear me. Good evening, I'm Stuart Fenton, and I'm running for Emmett County Prosecutor. If you just got volume, we are going to do a little quick PowerPoint about what a prosecutor does, a little history of the prosecutor's office here in Emmett County, and a little bit about me. And then we're going to open up the floor to any questions, and be happy to try to answer them. So what does a prosecutor do? A lot of people don't know. Prosecutor is considered the chief law enforcement officer of the county. So we don't supervise the police. We're not their boss. Each police agency is independent. However, anytime they want to charge someone with a crime, we make the ultimate decision. We decide who to charge, what to charge, whether to take it to trial, whether not to take it to trial, whether to plea bargain the case, whether to dismiss the case if we don't feel that we can prove it at trial. So we have a lot of power over other people's lives. So it's a very sobering responsibility. And you want a prosecutor who has a lot of experience and wise discretion, because that's an important part of what we do. Here's my background. Hopefully you can see the computer screen. This is a PowerPoint that I put together a while back for Rotary and other service organizations. I was Emmett County's Chief Assistant Prosecutor through 2020, 7 years. In that capacity, I handled all major and high-profile cases in the office, or just about all of them. 2 murder cases, over 200 criminal sexual conduct cases, some arson cases, and all the drug cases in the county. I was Bar Association President for Emmett and Charlevoix, 2017 through 2019, 2 terms, and I'm still on the executive committee of the Bar Association. Before I came here in 2013, I was a prosecutor downstate, mostly in Kalamazoo County, where I led a cold case homicide team, which was the highlight of my career. We caught and convicted over a dozen killers, and I was a part of that team. I was the leader of the team for 3 years, and it's one of my proudest moments. I've also been a specialized drug and sex crimes prosecutor for many, many, many years, both here in Emmett County and downstate in Kalamazoo. All told, I've tried over 30 homicide cases. And I train and teach prosecutors and law enforcement all over the state of Michigan. All right, so what does a prosecutor do? The first function is to screen cases. When the police arrest someone or they want to charge someone with a crime, they send us the police report and a charging request. We, in Michigan, have sole discretion as prosecutors whether to charge a case. We don't have grand juries here. So again, it takes wise discretion and a lot of experience to figure out what to charge, whether you think you can prove the case in front of a jury, whether there's not just probable cause, but reasonable likelihood of conviction. And that's the standard we use. So that's what we do primarily at first. That's how cases are started and put in the system. Some of the considerations are, we charge in a felony or a misdemeanor. Felony is anything over a year. Misdemeanor is a year or less. Misdemeanor is up to a year in jail. A felony, you can go to prison for up to life, depending on how serious the charge. Again, the standard of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. Are we going to be able to prove this case at trial? So that's, if we think we have a reasonable likelihood of being able to prove that, we will charge the case. Many times the victim may not be cooperative, may not want charges. We see that often in domestic violence cases, which is very common for many reasons: fear, threats, humiliation, embarrassment. Victims of sex crimes sometimes don't wish to proceed. And sometimes the crimes are so heinous that we might proceed anyway, even without the victim's cooperation, if we have enough evidence where we feel we can prove the case. If a defendant has been arrested, for instance, on a domestic violence case, let's say the night before, well, we have, basically 24 hours. We have more, but, we make the decision within 24 hours. And it's hard to sometimes decide not to charge someone with domestic violence when someone's been arrested. But if the victim is uncooperative, there's no witnesses, there's no injuries, and she's now recanting that anything even happened, sometimes we have to let them go and not charge them. Those are tough decisions as well. And that happens on the weekend a lot. We have to go in the office every weekend because you're not allowed to sit in jail all 48 hours or 72 hours of the weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, we're in the office making these decisions. And we're also typing up the warrants because we're in such a small county where we don't have secretaries come in on the weekends. So not only do we have to read the police reports and decide whether to charge, but we also have to type up the warrants ourselves. So weekend duty is quite interesting. And prosecutors appear at all these various pretrial proceedings. I'm not going to go through all of them. Plea bargaining. I want to talk about plea bargaining for a moment. A lot of people criticize prosecutors' offices for plea bargaining. Well, there's many factors that go into plea bargaining. And I would say there's two kinds of plea bargaining, good plea bargaining and bad plea bargaining. Bad plea bargaining, let's start with that, is when a prosecutor is just scared to try a case. Scared of losing, not because the proofs are bad, but because they're gun shy. They don't like to go to court. It's hard work trying a case. It's a lot of preparation and a lot of stress. And some prosecutors, I hate to say it, are lazy and they'd rather not do it. And if the defendant is willing to plead to something, they might just take it rather than have to work hard and go to trial. That's bad plea bargaining. Appropriate plea bargaining is where you plea bargain for good reasons. It's just what it says, where it's appropriate, such as your proofs have gone bad. Maybe the case was good when you charged it, but now the victim, again, doesn't want to cooperate, is refusing to testify. You don't have additional witnesses or evidence. It's a tough case. So there's a good reason to have to drop the charges down to something less. Or let's say you have the defendant charged with 10 counts of something. Most cases, it's concurrent sentencing, not consecutive. So it doesn't really matter whether they're convicted of 2 or 3 counts or 10 counts. So if they're willing to plead to 2 or 3 counts, we're more than happy to dismiss the other 7. That's appropriate plea bargaining. We charge way more cases than there are courtrooms and judges to try. So there's a lot of pressure, docket congestion. Judges want to move cases generally. And unless you incentivize a defendant to plead guilty, generally they're not going to plead straight up. Everybody thinks that, plea bargaining is a bad word, but it actually keeps the system operating because it would come to a crashing halt if we had to try every case. It's impossible. In Emmett County, we only have 1 circuit judge and 1 district judge. Well, there's 1,000 misdemeanors a year and 300 felonies a year. It would be impossible to try all those cases. So we make reasonable offers based on experience, based on the that's not a word, based on the seriousness of the crime, and based on the defendant's prior record. That's good plea bargaining. Again, bad plea bargaining is just getting rid of cases because you don't want to try them. Trials are the most intensive, most stressful thing that any lawyer does, let alone a prosecutor. And prosecutors try more cases than any other type of lawyer. We're in court all the time because of the volume of cases. So here's all the parts of a trial, and each one requires a lot of work. If you're a dedicated, conscientious prosecutor, you spend a lot of time on preparation. You spend a lot of time formulating questions for the prospective jurors. That's called voir dire. You spend a lot of time formulating a perfect opening statement, or as close to perfect as you can get. You spend a lot of time preparing witnesses for direct exam and figuring out the order of the witnesses. Who are you going to call first? Who are you going to call last? Who are you going to put in the middle? A lot of strategy, a lot of tactical decisions go into a trial. What if the defendant testifies? Are you going to be prepared to cross-examine him? That's a lot of work just thinking about that. And half the time they don't testify, but you have to be ready if they do. And then of course the all-important closing argument. Closing arguments, you want to be really good. You want to be organized. You want to be precise. You want to be persuasive. You don't want to be too long. You don't want to be too boring. You want to really move the jury, and you want to get them to think the way that that's consistent with your theory of the case. So closing arguments are imperative, and we spend a lot of time preparing them. And then rebuttal. After we give a closing argument, the defense gets to give a closing argument. then we get a rebuttal closing argument, a final argument, because we have the burden of proof. So we try to prepare these things ahead of time. A good defense attorney, a good prosecutor is going to be thinking about rebuttal closing arguments. What is the defense going to be? What is the defense going to say? So you're already ready for the rebuttal before they even give their argument. So these are the factors that go into making a good prosecutor. And then of course the all-important verdict, which is really the most stressful part of a trial, waiting for a jury verdict. And sometimes you can do everything right and you might still get a not guilty verdict. It's really hard convincing 12 people on a felony case to convict someone beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a very high standard of proof. You know, the old saying goes, you can't get 3 people to agree on where to go to lunch. How are you going to get 12 people to convict someone of a crime knowing that they might go to prison for the rest of their lives? It's a very daunting challenge. Is that the end of the PowerPoint? It might be. So that's the overview of what a prosecutor does. Now, who am I? I'm running for Emmett County prosecutor, and I'm going to give you the bullet point of why anybody should vote for me. I want to pull up this other document, if I could, and we'll just go through it really quickly. I also want to say, while we're doing that, I really appreciate everyone taking their time to be here tonight. It's a beautiful day outside, and if I wasn't running for office, I would be playing golf, riding a motorcycle, or playing tennis, one of my 3 hobbies. So thank you for being concerned enough citizens that you're taking time out of your busy day on a beautiful evening to be here. Speaks a lot for you. We're trying to share another document with you, and we should have it up in just a moment. Well, I'll just start going through it while we're looking for that document. So here's the outline of the reasons why I am the most qualified candidate for Emmett County prosecutor based on my background and experience, what I've accomplished. I've been in this field for 33 years. I was Emmett County's chief assistant for from 2013 to 2019, 7 years. President of the Emmett Charlevoix Bar Association for 2 terms. Still on the executive committee of that organization. Leadership. I've successfully prosecuted over 30 homicide cases. Some of this I've already told you. I led a cold case homicide team. I've been training the police. Can we make that bigger? A little bit bigger. Training the police and prosecutors for over 20 years. What else? I'm a huge volunteer for the community. I'm involved with MANA. I've been picking up food, rescuing food for at least 5 years. I'm on the board of Habitat for Humanity. I'm on the board of Rotary. I'm in Rotary and I'm on the board. Rotary does countless good deeds for this community. In fact, we're talking about the possibility of building a dog park and or refurbishing the Winter Sports Park right now for our 100th year anniversary. We'll make that decision within the next few months. I'm on a Northern Community Mediation Board. I'm on the orchestra board. I've played violin all around this community, including for the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra when we had a Holocaust instrument here for our Violins of Hope program. Played at the Carnegie Center. We played, Sally Page and I have played violin at every nursing home, assisted living, and independent living facility in this county. So I'm extremely involved in the community. What would I do if I was elected Emmett County prosecutor? What would I do differently than the current occupant? First and foremost, I would go to court and personally handle cases. I was born to be a prosecutor. It's what I do. It's who I am. And I'm certainly not going to become complacent and lazy and just collect a paycheck and sit in my office behind closed doors and pretend that I'm managing the office when the office is essentially self-managed. There's only 4 assistant prosecutors in the office. They need assistance. There's 300 felony cases a year, 1,000 misdemeanors. There's also other functions. We handle child support cases. We established paternity, and we handle juvenile court. So we handle mentally ill cases when someone is petitioned involuntarily. We handle child abuse and neglect cases, and we handle child delinquency cases. And then on top of all that, we also do appeals. So there's a lot of work there, and you can be assured that I will be right in the mix handling it. That is not happening now. In addition, I will put out year-end reports telling the community how we're doing. That's not being done now, hasn't been done in many years. When I first came up here, I strongly suggested that, because in Kalamazoo, we had a very professional prosecutor, and every year we did year-end reports. How did we do this year? How many trials did we have? How many did we win? How many did we lose? How many misdemeanors? How many felonies? How many drunk driving cases do we have a year? How many domestic violence cases do we have a year? The Board of Commissioners has a right to know. You have a right to know as a taxpayer, and we should be self-evaluating. We should be evaluating ourselves and our own performance. And I've always supported a drug court ever since I came here. I told my boss, who's now running again, and I see he's put on his website that he now supports a drug court. For 7 years, he was against it. I told him we had one in Kalamazoo and it worked miracles. It's cheaper and it's effective than incarcerating nonviolent offenders who have drug addiction problems. We should have a drug court. Sheboygan County has one. Tribal court, where I work currently, has one. It's effective. If you can save a life, prevent future crimes, turn around a life, it's worth it, and it's a whole lot cheaper. Trust me. So I will support a drug court. I will be extremely tough on sex offenders, especially child molesters, and there's a lot of them in this county and every other county. And people who prey on children, whether it's child abuse or child sexual abuse, will be dealt with severely. Also, drug dealers. You know, I don't have too much of a problem if you want to kill yourself and you're a user, but people who are dealing death and destruction, hardcore drugs in our community, heroin, ecstasy, methamphetamine, things like that will be dealt with harshly, and I've always been tough on those cases. Otherwise, I'm going to be flexible. If you're not a violent criminal, you're not a drug dealer, you're not a child predator, I'm going to be flexible. We need to resolve those cases. We don't need to be trying the wrong cases. I know which cases to prioritize and which ones to look for creative, flexible solutions on. And the last thing is, I'm not going to go through this, but you can look at it. Here's what people have said about me. These are people that I've worked with for years and years and years. These are leaders of law enforcement, chiefs of police, undersheriffs, cold case homicide detectives, law enforcement professionals that I've worked with over a 30-year career. That's what they've said about me. That's who I am. You can see all this and more on my website. So that's my spiel. And now I'm going to open it up for questions. We're unmuting everybody, and I'll try to address any relevant issues affecting our community, the local criminal justice system, or the prosecutor's office. Should be able to just unmute all. All right, and we can take this.
Hey, Stu, can you hear me?
So that I can see everybody and hear them. And all right, so I see some folks, and we're trying to unmute everybody. You can unmute yourselves too. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask me any question you want.
Stu, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey there, it's good to see you.
Likewise.
You got me fired up. I'll vote for you. So you did a great job of overview and, the differences between you and what's currently happening. So that was very helpful. Tell me what you would do differently in your first 90 days in office as the prosecutor of Emmett County.
Well, as soon as I get elected and before I take office, which is August 4th to January 1st, I'll be formulating a policy manual. We don't have a policy manual in the prosecutor's office. So people get in trouble for doing things that there's no policy manual for. And apparently that's what happened to me, or at least that was the excuse that was used when he let me go in August of 2019, was supposedly I violated some non-existent policies. And so that's the first thing I would do is I would write a comprehensive policy manual, some standards on how to look at cases, what standards do we use to charge cases, what standards do we use to plea bargain cases. Some of the things that I've just articulated would be put in writing so we're all playing from the same page. The second thing I would do, which would be the first thing I would do on day one, January 1st of 2021, when I would take office, is have a full staff meeting. The office will be closed for the first couple of hours. And we would discuss what's not working in the office, what hasn't worked in the past. How do we change that? I want to be an open, approachable, flexible leader, and I want to know what the problems are. I know some of the problems from my time there, but I want to hear from the staff what they perceive are the problems in the office and how we can fix them. I want them to know that I am approachable. Anybody can come talk to me at any time about anything. We're not going to have backstabbing. We're not going to have gossip and talking about each other. Office morale is going to improve immensely. Third thing I would do is have regular office meetings. When I first got hired here, I suggested that strongly because that's what we did in Kalamazoo. We meet weekly. The lawyers meet, and then the entire office meets. Support staff can meet separately. Lawyers can meet separately, and we all meet together. It builds morale. So we're all on the same page. We're not stabbing each other on the back. We're not talking about each other. We're not making fun of how things work and not doing anything about it. We're going to address as they come up, because new issues come up all the time, all the issues that need to be addressed together as a team. It's going to be a team approach.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And God bless everyone. Have a great night and a great week.